Hey, folks. We are live, I believe. If you're first in, please let me know if the sound is okay. Because if it is not, I need to know earlier to be sure that it is operational once we get into more talking. Let's check, make sure it's working here. Yep, looks like we're working. If you're in, please let me know if you can hear me or if you cannot, and if the audio quality is okay, so that I can fix it if I need to. I also went and hardwired my internet connection, so we should have a more stable upload. Somebody was saying that there was buffering issues last week, so hopefully this would fix any of those issues. I had to actually get 3-prong outlets installed in order for that to work. So please let me know if you can hear me. If you cannot hear me, then we need to fix it. And let me know if the audio quality is acceptable or not. Today was very crazy. This week has been pretty nuts. So hopefully the stream can go all right. I probably need to finish some stuff on my notes about it. I kind of was hoping that I'd get more people in to do some Q&A because I've had a very busy week and I only have 2 things to really discuss. I guess I could make a third one, but I don't have any notes on it. Hey, Motion VFX. Good to see you. Can you hear me? Is everything good? Because if it's not, I need to fix it. Also, okay, good. Yeah, I was having some issues. It sounded like when I went on playback just to make sure that the stream sounded okay, there was quite a bit of clipping in the audio, so I backed up the mic a bit. Because of the way I'm using the Fuji X-H1, there's not a whole lot of options I have to really adjust the audio like I do when I use OBS. Like I'm a lot more used to using OBS, so it's kind of weird that I don't have any control over my audio as far as I know on this. So I have to use like the straight up live stream service through YouTube, and it's not as good as OBS, not by a long shot. So, okay, good. Great. And again, one of the issues I have with my headset that I bought, like sometimes clipped audio just is horrible. I don't know if it's the headset or if it's just the source sometimes. So, yeah. Into okay. Yeah, this week has been incredibly busy. I said it before and I'll say it again. If you are getting involved in video production, media production, and you want to make money, start looking at educational content, contact your local universities, even the elementary schools. Start contacting people and trying to get some inroads. Even if you start out in let's say a temporary position where you say, hey, during the COVID situation, I will take your I will take your faculty made little lecture videos and I'll cut them up. Even if you start out doing that, you can make some money, and maybe push it to doing even more work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in education right now, a lot of it. And there's not a whole lot of people who are catering to their demands. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. It'll be more off the cuff than usual, just because I'm working in that field a lot right now. So I know a bit more about it, so I can speak about it a little easier than having to like organize all my thoughts. But there's so much work right now in educational content that it's unbelievable. And that includes not only video production, but also learning how to create interactive media so that learners can be a bit more actively engaged in learning content. And that's actually really easy to do. So thank you, Video Media Television, for your notes there. That helps a lot, that I know that it's coming in clear and with decent quality. So let's see. Let's see here. What do I have? Yeah, so this week, starting out with the BSing around, since we usually wait until around 4:30 for more people to come in and talk about the normal stuff. I didn't watch all that much stuff this week as far as like varied movies and all that, because I was getting through Norseman. Like, I'd seen the first 2 seasons, but they released a 3rd season and I wanted to refresh myself on what was going on. And I gotta say, I was really disappointed in the 3rd season of Norseman. My wife and I were just commenting on how great the first 2 seasons were. They are so funny. And then the 3rd season starts, and this isn't spoilery in any way. It's like they did like a almost like a prequel thing, and we had to research to see if it was done by the same people, like if the same writers were involved, and they were. So we were really confused. They made some really interesting choices in that season. Like, it's not that it's bad, but Norseman, the first 2 seasons are just so funny that seeing them kind of take a really big step back, in my opinion, was really disappointing. I was very disappointed. I don't know what it is with 3rd seasons. 3rd season of Ozark got me disappointed. I'm not sure why the guys at Norseman decided to do what they did, but it's really weird. Very disappointed. So I'm hoping that if they do another season, that they bring back whatever it was that was lost from the first 2, because it was very disappointing. Yeah, I hear that about Umbrella Academy. Let me see if that's what I think it is. Yeah, the Umbrella Academy. Let's see here. Oh, geez. The first thing here: Umbrella Academy under fire for alleged use of anti-Semitic tropes. Really? That's the first thing that pops up. Let's see. It's an American superhero web television series. So you're already losing me with it being a American superhero thing. I am very sick of superhero stuff. So, it being about superheroes already has me not wanting to watch it. I've been sick of superheroes for, I don't know, almost a decade. So, I don't know. Like, even when I was working on movies that were like Spider-Man and was it like Spider-Man and Man of Steel and stuff like that? Like, I was already kind of sick of it. And then especially after we had finished out the work, I was really sick of it. So if it's superhero stuff, it probably isn't for me. The the caveats to the superhero movies that I like, the ones that I've been okay with. Thor Ragnarok was all right. I think most of it was pretty good. The ending I thought was terrible, and then the most of the action scenes I thought were really boring. But it was like all the other stuff that I really really liked. And then Guardians of the Galaxy is pretty good. It's kind of like those two I think are a bit refreshing. The Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok. Like I didn't really like Black Panther much, except for I really like the costume design. But it's just those movies in general, like I'm not really a big fan of. And then for the shows, I tried watching Luke Cage. I didn't like it. I tried watching Flash. I didn't like it. The superhero show that I liked, or thing that I've liked better than most of the recent stuff, was actually watching for the first time Lois and Clark. I thought like it was actually refreshing to see campy, it's kind of superhero, but it's more like about the Clark Kent version of Superman versus, so it's not generic heroes driving now. I don't know what you mean. Maybe you can expand on what you mean by that, because generic heroes, I don't know what you mean by generic. And I don't know what you mean by driving now. I just know it's like superhero stuff. I just get really bored with it. Like I remember when X-Men First Class came out, it was supposed to be like this refreshing thing because it was like different actors or something. And it was going to be different because it was like young Professor X, and it wasn't interesting. It's nothing against the people who work on that stuff. It's just not my thing anymore. So yeah, Norseman, I was disappointed. Very disappointed. I think that they have such talent working on that show that it just it was a big letdown. Like I know they're better than that. So, hey DJ, how's it going? Well, yo. Exorcist. Which Exorcist? Because the only one I've seen is the first one. Exorcist, the first one, there's some really, really good stuff in that. The only thing is I have a real hard time with some of the ways that it was done. YouTube keeps shutting down the video. What are you talking about? I keep a version of it up on my computer so I can make sure that the stream's going okay, and I haven't seen it cut out or anything, so I'm not sure. That's really disappointing if that's happening. It's not on my end, I assure you. I'm not doing anything. Hey, Ankara, good to see you. Yeah. Oh, okay. There's a series now with some of the original cast. Yeah, that would be interesting to see. I haven't seen that. Yeah, the old Exorcist. I really like the film. It's just the means of making the film. If you've looked it up, it's pretty bad. How they strapped the girl to the bed and got her to contort like that, and then the stuff they did to the guy playing the priest. The director is kind of a jerk. So, it reminds me, I was just reading, there was a Cracked article this past week that I saw, and it was talking about things that were done in Die Hard, and some of the things that are done in that are really horrible. It's just weird how sometimes we really like films, and then you look at how it was made, and it's like they kind of torture the actors sometimes. There's a reason why actors sometimes make a lot of money, and For example, I believe it was, who was it? Who was it? One of the actors in Die Hard. It wasn't Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman, when they drop him, when they do the stunt where he's being dropped off the tower, like he did that stunt, and they said, "Okay, we're going to drop you on 3," and then they dropped him like on 1. So that's like genuine terror on his face when he's being dropped, and that's a pretty steep drop. And they really shouldn't have done that. Like, I get it, you suffer for your craft and all that, but they shouldn't have done that. And then, like, I think it was Bruce Willis, because the director wanted the gunshots to be louder, like Bruce Willis. I believe it's Bruce Willis. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he still has like a problem hearing. But yeah, I mean, the expression like on the priest's face when he gets puked on or whatever, like that was genuine. Like he was not, like, it was supposed to hit him like in the chest, and it didn't. So it's kind of funny. Oh, my brother's. Oh, that's really bad. If my feed is not coming through right, I'm gonna be really unhappy with that. Let me see. I'm gonna check on my phone to see if it does what I'm seeing. I don't need to hear myself. Yeah, I'm gonna check because DJ, if you're having trouble, it might be you and not necessarily the stream. Because someone was saying that last week, and it wasn't the stream; it was actually them. Yeah, I'm not getting a problem on my phone, so I'm not. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, man. So, uh, well, let me just make sure. Let me see here. Let me see here. It calls physically grueling filming of the breast and gown painful scene. Yeah, there's a lot of stories about this spinal injury that Ellen Burstyn got. So, I'm not making stuff up. I'm not making things up. So, if you like, I'm good with liking the movie. It's not a problem, but facts are facts. So, it's just there are some things that really suck. Like, you got to make sure you're careful with your actors. So, it's you really need to look, if you really want to know about it, like look up the information about it. I'm not making it up. So, okay. So what I did watch, I watched what the hell was the name of it? Can't remember the name of it right now. There's a whole series called the something. Let me just double check what the name of it is, because I ended up not really liking it a whole lot. So I probably just forgot. Let's see here. What the hell did we watch last week? I did not watch Harry Potter. I can't remember what it's called now. This is embarrassing. Yeah, I can't remember. Can't remember the name of it. Damn it. Anyway, so we're gonna move on from that because I've had a very crazy week and I have not watched a whole lot of movies or shows except for Norseman. So, anyway, so the topics that I have this week, I want to talk about two major things and then one other thing that might be fun to just kind of discuss. So the first thing will be, like, I want to talk about with the Sony A7S III. We have several 135 cameras that shoot like 10-bit and stuff, and RAW. We have inexpensive pocket cameras that are shooting 12-bit RAW. So going to talk about that and why we don't have any excuses anymore if you have this kind of gear on why your content might suck. The next thing I want to talk about is getting into educational content. I want to answer questions, so I'm hoping you guys came prepared with some questions this week. And I also want to talk about, the first thing I want to talk about, though, is the Axios interview with Donald Trump, not because of politics, but because it's one of the top trending things right now, as far as media, at least in the United States. And if you watched it, there's some really interesting things that they do, and I wanted to discuss it a little bit. So, I'm not going to make this about a political thing like on the channel, but what I want to talk about is like the way they shot the interview, and the things that I saw, and to see if you saw the same thing and whether or not it even matters. So, yeah. Let's see here. I see some comments in the chat. I'll get to that in a little bit. I'll do the first story and kind of just do channel update stuff. So what I'm going to be doing with the channel is I'm going to try to get like like where you join the channel and you pay a little bit of money per month, and you get some additional privileges. So I'm going to finalize those this week and probably roll those out next week. I have to make like a announcement video or something in order for it to even happen, and I have to get them all approved. So I'm working on that. So that way you can, if you want to donate every month, you can do that, and you get a little something in return. For just like what Emotion VFX did right now, I really appreciate that. This stream has Super Chat activated. This channel has, for the live streams and stuff, has the Super Chat activated. So if you'd like to donate some money, please do so. It helps to make sure that I can get these to you every week, and helps to pay for the costs that are associated with making these. They cost, a lot of time and money to produce. So if you can help out in any way, then it helps me help you. Okay. So, okay. So the Axios interview with Donald Trump, if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend that you watch it. It's not just because it's a political thing and it's important, to watch stuff like this. However, for content creators, if something is being successful, it's important to see what it is and why it's successful. And there's some really interesting things that I saw in that interview that were things for us to think about as creators. So obviously, if you're like a filmmaker, this probably won't really apply to you. Yeah. Sorry, DJ. I don't know why it's not working. I tried it on my phone and it was working. I can't tell you why it might not be working for you. I'm sorry, man. It's really crappy for me that you can't watch the thing. I guess maybe that's why my numbers keep dropping off, because people are trying to watch on their phone and it's not working. That's stupid. I can't tell you. Yeah, I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why it's doing that. So I can't tell you. Sorry, guys. I have it hardwired in, so I'll try to shut down a bunch of things, but I don't think it's my fault. Yeah, thanks, Paolo. I don't know why it's being like that. That really sucks for me. So, okay. All right. So in the Axios interview, I strongly recommend that you watch it. And again, not being political about it, it's just that when you look at how something that is very popular, that is, it's a hit basically, which is, top 5 on trending, you should watch it because you're curious on how to make better content. So if you watch it, there's some really interesting things that they do. The whole thing is like handheld, which I hate, by the way. Like, I really don't like that. But what it does is that when it's handheld, it adds an air of what's the word? I guess realness to what you're seeing. Because a lot of interviews, if you're not familiar with doing a lot of interviews like this, the interviews are cut up. And when you have the cameras locked down, it makes it a lot easier to do stuff like punch in. It makes it easier to kind of cut things out and to cut across. And the way that they did it made it a little bit harder to do that, just in the way that it was shot. They also do some other interesting things. The angle of view is pretty wide on the people being interviewed. Usually, like, especially today, there's almost an obsession with getting really, really in close to the subjects, and they didn't do that. And then also the two shot is really off center, and in one of them, like, they're like halved on the edges of the frame, so it looks really weird. Also, if you look at the reporter's tie and then the flag pin on Donald Trump, like, there's a lot of artifacts. Okay. So, obviously the flag pin is something that you can't really do anything about, but the tie, obviously someone did not tell him, you probably shouldn't wear that tie because it looks horrible on camera. So those are things that you should be looking at. Like, your wardrobe choices for the people that appear on camera is really, really important. I had a shoot ruined by the wardrobe choice of the interviewer. It was completely ruined. The guy was just like slobby, and he had, like, his collar was all messed up, and there was nothing we could really do about it. And in this case, there was artifacts, and you can check this kind of stuff in your pre-production. Like, you go, hey, whoever the interviewer is, like, dude, these are the kinds of patterns that you're limited to, so that you don't have those artifacts. Because especially for me, like, it really bothers me when I see it. Like, my eyes go right to it. So, that's something that could have been totally avoided. But I had like when I was watching this, I had a very unsettled feeling because of the way it was shot. It felt very unsettling. I think it's because, the two shot was unbalanced. You had the handheld stuff going on. You had these like shots of the back of Trump's head. Like, it just felt weird. And I am part of, the school of thought that says that everything is intentional. So I think it's important that when you watch this, you ask yourself, why is it done this way? Like, why did they shoot it in this way and not a bunch of other ways? So I think that's really important for us to do, especially for stuff like this that should be pretty much realism. Let me put the link. If you haven't seen this interview, you should see it. Because it's here. Right, this is the interview that I'm talking about. Again, this has nothing to do with politics. Just because it's, an interview with a president or whatever. When we watch stuff as creators, we need to see, like, if something's successful, why is it successful? Can I emulate that, or can I do better than that? So the kind of things I'm talking about are all like choices that you can make. They're all choices that you can make for your production. And if you just look at this and you say, I like the way that it looks, and you copy it, you may not be copying it for the reasons that should be for what you're doing. Okay. So, the handheld look, the weird two shots that appear like my eye immediately goes to when like a two shot feels really unbalanced. And then like the shots of each person interviewing are very wide, like, and they stay that way for quite a while. And I'm not 100% sure why they did that, because usually you get in closer so you can get the expression. It's just different. Like the way that they shot this interview is different than most that I'm familiar with, and it left me with a feeling. So that kind of feeling, you should ask yourself, why do you feel that way? How did they make this to make me feel that way? And then not only that, but the other interesting choice that they had was that you guys need to understand is that they're not doing a film thing. They're not using a film tonal response curve or anything like that to make this look the way that it does. It's made to look realistic. It's made to look like realism for a reason. So when you're shooting stuff like this, there's like a time and a place to do things, and there's a time and a place to do like some kind of film emulation kind of thing, and then there's a time and a place to make it look more normal or real or more like video or whatever. And I think they made the right choice on that. And the interesting thing is, despite any of the issues you have with this, okay, this is one of the top videos trending right now. And why is that? Even though there's like some mistakes that we can point out or some things that we don't like, the reason is because, as has always been the case, content is king. The content that you can get is more important than the technicalities, really, because even if stuff looks out of focus or it doesn't look like how you would do it or it doesn't look perfect, reality is that is not even going to matter that much if you get the kind of content that they got in this video. The way that the interview was done and the kinds of responses that they got out of the subject, that's why it's trending. It has almost nothing to do with like the way it's done as far as like the look of it and everything. That's all part of it, but it has a lot more to do with the content that they shot. Okay. So, if you're producing content, especially if you're in charge of just the look of it, that's one thing. But if your job is to produce content, and get people to watch it, you need to see stuff like this. Okay. And you need to see how they're doing it and to see like what the merits are for this kind of content and why it's successful. If you can emulate that, you can make good content that people will want to watch and they will be interested in. Cthulhu says, that explains Tiger King's popularity is the content. Yeah, because the way that it looks is not, it's not the greatest thing that I've ever seen, but that doesn't matter. I mean, doing documentaries is very hard. It's like a different technical skill set than doing something like, shooting the next James Bond movie. Okay. Like the skill sets are totally different. And when you have people who are like, good at making something like a James Bond movie, but then they go and try to do a documentary, it's like this weird thing that happens where they don't really know how to do it. And, again, though, the content is how they sell it, and then how they present the content, which is usually done through editing. A lot of it is done in post, is how something like Tiger King happens. The way that they dole out all the information in Tiger King is, it's masterful. It's absolutely masterful. So I'm just going to check on my phone. Maybe I can leave this up so I can check my phone periodically to make sure my feed's not getting interrupted, because I keep hearing that there's problems. So I'll leave it up over there. Yeah, so watch that interview. If you haven't seen Tiger King already, I think I mentioned that if you're interested in creating content, you should watch Tiger King. Also, another one, if you haven't seen it, is the Great British Baking Show, which I think is called something else in other countries. But if you watch that, that is how you create a perfect template for creating a show. Okay. Like the way that they have each episode set up and how they've formatted it is perfection. It's perfection for television. So, these kinds of things, if you're not already studying it, like, actively going out, looking at what's trending right now this week, it doesn't have to be every day, but like what's trending this week. Why is it trending? How much money do you think it costs to produce it? Because that's another thing, is the return on investment idea, right? Like, you want to know how much money it would cost to produce something and whether or not it would be worth your time to do it, right? So these are all ways that you can academically become a much, much better content producer. And really, all of us are responsible for that. It doesn't matter if you're the editor or the videographer or the actual producer, the director, whatever. You're all responsible for producing that content. And the more on the same page you are on how important all these things are, the more you can do things like, the working harder, but not working smarter, but not harder kind of thing. It's a lot smarter to focus on, okay, like, we don't need to get 10 lights in this for this interview to make it look like this cinematic filmic looking thing, if we're not going to get really any kind of feel out of it that we were wanting out of this video. Sometimes you can just use like 1 or 2 lights and that does the job. Shooting handheld versus getting tripods set up, and why you might want to do that, and what kind of equipment you need, and whether or not you're going to get a return on investment. These are all important things to consider. So, I just thought, with that Axios interview, I thought it was a really good opportunity for us to, look at it and figure out, like, okay, this is trending. Why? So cool. So let's go in the chat. Let's see here. Yeah, I got some people telling me about Umbrella Academy. I don't know. I'll give it a shot. Okay. I'm looking for something to watch right now, so I'll give Umbrella Academy a shot. I'm just not into the superhero thing, man. And I know that it's different. Each one I'm told, like, by my friends, hey, this one's different. It's, these things are different, and it just feels the same. So it's just like the idea of superheroes, and it's just like, usually I've seen that kind of stuff before, so I'd have to see it. I know that The Boys is one that I want to see as well. Like, I've heard there's some good things about that, so I want to check that out. It's just I understand that that's supposed to be a superhero thing too, and I'm just not. It's like hard for me to get excited about it. Talking about Exorcist. Yeah, I'm telling you, like, in Exorcist, the actress she ended up with a permanent injury in her back. So, it's just, I'm just saying that when you make movies and stuff, just keep in mind that the safety of your crew and of your actors should be at the topmost priority. You should not be risking, the lives of people or their well-being or their health for stuff. And I know a lot of times it's not intentional, but we need to think about that. Like, stunts, for example, are not, like, if you don't have professional stunt people doing stunts for you, you really need to have, medical people. You need to have medical people on standby. If you're using weapons of any kind, even if they're props, you need to have weapons masters. You need to, notify police. You need to do all of those things. And, it's just an example. Even when you have professional people working on movies, they can make some mistakes, and those mistakes can be lifelong. So Alan Rickman Alan Rickman made the best villain ever in this film. Yeah, in Die Hard, he was awesome. I don't know about best villain ever, but I always really, really liked him. I really like also in Mel Brooks, Robin Hood Men in Tights, when they kind of make fun of him and the way he talks when he was in Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. I freaking love that. I actually like him as the Sheriff of Nottingham in Prince of Thieves more than Hans Gruber. So 96 Frogger, Froger or Frogger. Why is there such a focus on resolution over dynamic range? I feel like dynamic range is always forgotten, and I don't really know why. Dynamic range, I think, is probably a little harder to do. I think that's one thing. There's kind of a ceiling that gets hit, and then it's hard to break through that until there's like a pretty big leap in technology. And I think that by resolution, I think you mean by the image size, by how many pixels are there. The truth is that because of how super sampling works, generally when let's say you have an 8K image versus a 4K image, if they were both technically the same on capture, if they were the same dynamic range, the higher res one, when you super sampled it down to the 4K, you had an 8K and a 4K. When you super sample the 8K image down to 4K, the shadows usually look cleaner, which makes it look like there's higher dynamic range. So, and then also with higher resolution or higher, megapixels, because we're talking about that interchangeably now. What happens is when you pack those more pixels down into, smaller boxes, it usually, as long as you're using a good algorithm for it, will create better color accuracy. Usually there will be higher perceived resolution. Usually, not all the time. It depends again about how it's processed. How you process stuff for display. This is a Steve Yedlin thing. How you process your images for display usually is more of a contributing factor on this stuff than just the size of the image or whatever. But anyway, that's why I think. And then also, I think that there are advantages to having the higher pixel count. I think you get diminishing returns at some point, but if you say, look, we made a 12K camera, that's really impressive. It's going to impress, I think, a lot more people and make a bigger splash on the just general overall market than, this camera now has 16 stops dynamic range or 18 stops or whatever. And I think that those also take a lot of processing power. Like the only way that I'm aware of to get that kind of dynamic range, like that higher dynamic range, is to produce sensors that take like the dual gain. It's like grabbing two different signals and then it will combine them into an image later that, it'll be like a higher image one is shot with a higher gain setting so that the shadows should be cleaner, and then the other lower gain should have more highlight information, and then it kind of like puts those together. That kind of technology is a little, I think, harder to do, but I'm not an engineer. And it's also, I think it also tends to be a little bit less impressive to some people. If you're selling televisions, for example, the HDR thing, like people have not, in my understanding, been so like, wide-eyed about HDR until they see it. But when they see the Ks, they go, oh my gosh, that's 8K or that's 6K. They go, oh, that's going to be better because the number's bigger. But HDR, you don't put a number to that. You don't know what it is. So it's a lot more muddled, if that makes sense. I think it might be a marketing thing. I have a lot of like speculation, but I don't know. I would agree that getting better dynamic range is probably a really good way forward instead of worrying about pixel count. But I don't know. Like the C300 Mark III for me, like if that could shoot RAW, dude, I'd be down. Like I would probably buy that quick. So yeah, if this stream isn't working on the applications like for phone or whatever, I'm really sorry. I'm using it now on my phone. I have it up and I'm not seeing any problems. So I'm not sure. I'm not seeing any lag. I'm not seeing any issues, and I'm using Wi-Fi and the YouTube app. So if there's, if there's issues, I don't know what it would be. The live chat's working and all that. So I couldn't tell you. I'm sorry, guys. I'll leave it up just so I can check. Yeah, if I'm laggy, sometimes I don't know what else to do about it. I have my internet, like I have the cable hardwired in now, so it's not through Wi-Fi. There should be no signal issues, so I'm not sure why there'd be any issues at all. So, and I did a speed check before, and everything was working fine. Was having buffering issues. Yeah, if you're having those issues, I just don't know. I don't know what the problem is. Cthulhu says, never liked handheld shots, not since I tried watching Cloverfield and threw up after 10 minutes. Yeah, I think that the one of the issues I have with it is that I want to know what the intent is. Like for me, cinematic storytelling is all about intent. For that, like Cloverfield, I get what they were doing, but then like you look at the quality of the video and it's like how, if people are supposed to be shooting this handheld and stuff, like how does it look like that? So it's kind of one of those weird things that I don't know how I feel about it. I think sometimes handheld works perfectly fine and I like it, and then other times I don't get it. Like in my head right now, I'm remembering in Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams, the first Star Trek movie that he made. There's a conversation scene in the bar after Kirk fights some guys, and then Pike, like Pike was like trying to get him to join Starfleet, and they're shooting handheld for some reason in the coverage, and I didn't understand. Like I want to know in that movie, like, why did you pick to shoot this handheld? Like I can understand when Kirk is running around the ship trying to save them from going into like an ambush or whatever the hell was going on. I don't remember. It was like he's trying to protect them from something going on. He's like, no, don't, we have to stop. We can't, go there. It's like, okay, you rush around and, you need to have it look all actiony. But if you're having just a conversation scene where people are sitting there talking, why is it handheld? Like, I don't understand the intent of that. And even like the lens flares, like Cheap Ass Review says, like the thing about the lens flares, I can understand throwing those in because you're trying to make it look, this really flashy, really cool, impressive thing. Like I can kind of understand that. I get the intent behind that, but sometimes the handheld stuff, like I never quite understand why it's being done in certain situations. Like, same thing with the using a Steadicam. Like in Halloween, the original Halloween, they use a Steadicam for a very specific reason, to give you the perspective of the killer, and you don't know who it is, so it's kind of interesting. But then there's like some shows that I watch where they do all this one shot stuff. Like they put the camera on a Steadicam and they do like this whole thing in one shot, but there's nothing really interesting going on. It's just like a conversation happening. But then you don't get different angles. You don't get the close-ups to see their emotion. You don't get all this other coverage. And then you're kind of stuck with the one performance, which is one of the big problems, in my opinion, with doing the one shot thing. Like one shot shots are great in certain situations, and then you don't get to get the best takes out of your actors when you do it. Sometimes, like you get the one. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like I remember, I think it was Children of Men, where there's like a one shot thing. And I was just like, what, but why did they do that? Other than to say like, we did it in one shot. Like maybe it's just a technical thing that they did because they thought it would be cool, but I didn't really understand it in that one either. I get it in like Goodfellas. I get it in Halloween. I get it in like, I think in Star Trek when they're, doing this big rush to try to stop things. Like I get it if they're doing it in those situations, but sometimes I'm just like, it's just a conversation between three people. Like, why is it all handheld? Why is it all in one shot? Like, I don't understand. So, it's just intent. Like I would rather it, like, to me, it's cinematic when there's an intent behind it, and I can understand why it's done away. When it's just like kind of done to be flashy, I don't get that stuff. We're talking about the Tiger King popularity being the content. Curious about your time ADing. I had to do that once during film class and I never wanted to do it again. I love ADing. I was a floor director for the news for a bit, which it's not exactly like ADing, but it's pretty close in that you kind of like are in charge of the set. Like the director's in charge of like all the creative stuff and all that, but as an AD, you really need to run the set. You're like the set manager, and I worked on several productions, about 10, and most of them were smaller ones. But the bigger one that we did, it was that one was actually part of a class project, but it was bigger because we actually had like a pretty good sized budget. But the rest of them were all paid projects, and they were like working with different crews and stuff. But the major thing is that you have to plan out the day and you have to keep everything moving on schedule. And that's when like I'm at my best. So the story that I like to tell about it sounds weird because like this was a very stressful situation, but it kind of like speaks to the kind of things that I like to do and how I kind of like get excited about doing work. And it's kind of weird because I don't think a lot of people would feel this way, but when we had to shoot on Hollywood Boulevard, and then we had to shoot like on a street over from Hollywood Boulevard. And the reason we had to do all this because we didn't have a huge budget. And if you ever have shot in Hollywood, everything's expensive, and the people there know that it's expensive, and they will try to extort you for money in order to pay for their inconvenience. So if you guys don't know what like a UPM does, they're responsible for securing that you get everything right for your shoot. Well, you know, I had done all the requests and everything to get what we needed on the shoot day. We needed to get a shot. It was with a crane, one street over from Hollywood Boulevard, and we needed to get a crane shot of a motorcyclist coming in. He had to take off his helmet, and he was going toward the building, and then we had to get a bunch of shots of the characters kind of going in and out of these buildings. So not like, you know, dialogue scenes or whatever, because it just didn't call for that. It was all kind of going in and out of stuff and getting like approaching shots and those kinds of things. So, so like we get stuff set up, and I'm like going through my list, and I'm like, okay, you know, where's our motorcyclist? Because the actor couldn't drive the motorcycle. We needed to have the, you know, stunt guy, driver, you know, those kinds of people to do those jobs. And they're like, we don't have it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? We don't have a motorcyclist. Like we had the crane getting set up, we had everything happening, and no motorcyclist. And I'm like, what the F? So I like immediately I was like, okay, you know, I pointed to a PA. I said, get one of those big black markers and get a foam core, because like the foam core for grips, like you basically use it as reflectors, right? And write big sign, you know, need biker, be in Hollywood movie, pay, you know, $400. And within 5 minutes, we got a motorcyclist. You know, he was like on vacation. He came, we had him sign, you know, because you want to make sure you have extra contracts and stuff, so that if you do need someone at the last second, you can just like pull off an extra off the street if they want. So like we had them sign all this stuff to make sure that, you know, we had everything squared away legally, and all he had to do was kind of like approach. So, you know, that I figured out really quickly when somebody kind of hosed me. The second thing was that I had this PA. I forget what the name of the building was. The previous day we were shooting on a rooftop. I remember it was a hotel that used to be owned by Al Capone. I think that's what it was. It was like owned by him, or he got like arrested there. It was some major thing with Al Capone. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. So like, you know, we had to haul a lot of gear up to the top, and the elevator stopped working that day. Like there's an elevator in this old ass building, and so they had to like haul this stuff up the stairs all the way up to the top. Okay, so this sucked. It sucked. Okay, I was having to help. Like, you know, there were people helping to carry stuff. You know, and I don't remember the name of the hotel. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I don't remember what the name was. But anyway, so like I had some grip PAs that were assigned to help with the setup and the teardown, and it was these three people, they kept sitting around. Like they would bring up like one thing. Like, have you ever, say had to get a sibling to help you clean something, and they'd like pick up a pen and put it somewhere and then go take a break? That was how they were working, and it was very frustrating. And so I had to keep like on them to go and get the stuff and bring it up. So I'd already, that day, and it was a long shoot day, I'd already been a little annoyed with them. So I took the worst one and I gave her the easiest job. Okay. Her job was to stand in a parking spot, and we had like all the permits and everything to use this part of the street where nobody was supposed to use the parking spots and all this kind of stuff. And I said, okay, your job is to stand in this spot, look this way, and block anyone from parking there. You just, you stand there with your hands out. That's all I asked her to do. Okay. So, we get the crane all set up. We do some tests. We block everything out. We have everything ready to go. We're on time, on schedule. And so, we get ready to lock it up, and I turn, and the person that I'd asked to stand in one spot, I put her there. I put her in the spot and faced her the way I wanted her to face. She was not only in the wrong spot, she had moved to the opposite end of the parking spot, leaving it open. She was facing the other way on her phone. So I got like really pissed off, and I got angry, and I was like, I was mad, but I was just like, you had one job, and it was the easiest job on the set, and you could not do it. Like, you're out of here, And so like, I go up to the guy who's parking, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, but we have this all reserved for our shoot. You can see that we're shooting right here, and we're ready to shoot. So if you could please, park maybe across the street, we can let you go into the building and do whatever you need, but we really need this space. And he said $500. And I was like, excuse me? And he said, give me $500 and I'll move. And I said, okay, so we have a police officer a block away. So all I need to do is call, and they will ticket your car, probably more than $500, and you will be towed. So, I give you about 10 minutes in the building. If you don't move, I can guarantee you will be towed. So he took the whole 10 minutes. He took the whole 10 minutes and he was gone. And so like, we ended up being able to shoot it. But, those are the kinds of things that you end up having to do. And it's like very, very stressful, but I kind of love it. And we got all the shots we needed, and we got done on time. And that's what I do. And even today, I use the same principles of ADing on sets to do everything else I do, because it's all about like scheduling management and making sure that if there's any issues, you take care of them quickly and efficiently. So, that's the kind of stuff that I did when I was ADing. So it's definitely not for everybody. But if you want to get into more the producing side, I think that ADing is a really smart thing to look at. And it's a thing that not a lot of people want to do. So you'll be able to climb the ranks pretty easily if you have a tolerance for it and you can deal with people. I think you can have a really good career doing that. You just need to. Back then, I didn't have as good of personal skills as I do now. Probably back then I was kind of a jerk when I was talking to people when they would screw stuff up. But when I had talked to my mentor about the way that I was approaching things, he said, the thing is that in the situations that you were in, when you kind of got upset about it and you dealt with it and it was done right, like at the end of the day, everything was done right and you got what you needed. The ADs that I've worked with would have gotten even more irate, and they would have stomped their feet and got angry and screamed at people. And you were able to just use your normal speaking voice to get people to hop to. So that I always kind of liked. So, and then when I worked for the news, it was kind of a similar situation where, like, if people were doing stupid things and they wouldn't listen to me, I'd have to kind of use my tone to really explain to them without saying a whole lot that they needed to listen to what I was saying. I remember we were doing, I think it was a Halloween show for the news, and man, the one of the producers would not get out of the shot, and I had to yell at her to. I think I said the F word when I was counting down 10, 9, 8, like whatever. I'm not going to say her name, but T, move. T, we're going live. 5, get the out of the shot, and she was like, what? And then she like left. And all she was doing was gabbing with people. So so like sometimes you have to do that kind of stuff when you're like, especially if it's live production, like you don't have enough time to sometimes be as nice as you'd like to be. Like if I didn't get her out of the shot, we would have cut and she would have been like talking to people on television saying things that she should not be saying. So I kind of helped her, but it's like, and then I got in trouble for that. I got in trouble for that too. So I shouldn't have swore. So I'm not perfect. Let's see here. Too much lens flare and Cloverfield didn't make any sense. Yeah, I mean Cloverfield, I think they suffered from having too much money to do what they were trying to do. Like if you like, there's a difference between Blair Witch Project and like Cloverfield, and I think they were trying to be like similar in how they were presenting things. And Blair Witch Project hits the nail on the head, but it's also lightning in a bottle, so you're not really going to be able to likely copy that success because people already know what it is. Like they basically tricked a bunch of people into believing it was real based on how it looked. So you're probably not going to be able to do that again. But Cloverfield, I don't think really quite did it. Just imagine Blair Witch Project shot on tripods. Yeah. It's funny because I didn't even read that comment before, but yeah, like there's a reason why Blair Witch Project looks like that. It's because it really was like those people were out in the woods, like, recording all this stuff. And I mean, that's what they did with it. I mean, the way, if you look at the way that they made that movie, it's really interesting and it works for that. But if you try to do that same thing with a project that doesn't really call for that, it won't work. It just won't. Kramer versus Kramer dinner scene one shot, 13 out of 10. I've seen that movie twice, but I don't quite recall that shot. I probably wasn't paying attention to that during that. That movie is really pulled by the superb acting by both leads. I mean, just perfect casting for that. Berlin movie, entire movie was in one shot, even upstairs through cars. I think Rope is like that too. So, but that one was kind of a failure. Cthulhu, now I understand what your voice quality had to do with why your prof says you'll make a good AD. He actually thought I'd be a good director. I just didn't have the courage to do it. I think with like AD, it's like a different thing. Like when you're the director and you're creatively in charge of things, like the whole thing is kind of your fault if it doesn't work. But as an AD, you kind of get a little bit of leeway on the creative stuff. So it's like, hey, I made sure we got the stuff, I made sure that everything was scheduled. We got the shots that we needed. We got it done on time. Like, everyone got fed. Like that's something, if you're an AD, you need to make sure you schedule out time where people can break and take their breaks and relax a bit. That's like really important. But when, like, I remember he said, like, cause we were looking at a screenplay and I was telling him the creative direction I would have gone with it. And he's like, I don't understand why you're not a director. And I was just like, I'm honestly just too scared to do it. Like I've always been too scared to do it. I still haven't Yeah, I still haven't directed anything because I'm too afraid that it won't turn out right. As far as like narrative stuff, like for the other stuff I produce, I do a fine job, but for narrative stuff, I've always been worried. Um, New job on set now is COVID-19 awareness and safety. Oh, for sure. I would imagine so. I mean, anytime that that might be something that continues to be like normalized, where people are needed to make sure that there's safety on set in regards to those things. Like sometimes people don't take any diseases or like even foodborne illnesses seriously, and then you have a problem with the production because somebody got sick, or one of your lead actors got a cold, which makes it where their performance is not nearly as good and people don't want to be near them. So the yeah the I would imagine that would become more normalized, kind of like how it's more normal to make sure that whatever content you create, especially if it's for education, has subtitles. And there's whole industries built around that. So, all right. So, yeah, see, I'm using the phone app. Everything's still working. So, if you're having problems, I don't know what the issues are. Mine is working perfectly fine. Okay. Oh, you know what it might be? If you're having issues, tell me if it's an iPhone or if it's a Android. Because if it's iPhone, which I know DJ has an iPhone, then I think it's something to do with Apple, because they have had some weird stuff with YouTube. How much influence does an AD have over creative decisions? Not really. You don't have any. Your job is, you're basically a manager. Part of it, you could have a little bit sorry about that. You could have a little bit of influence over, like, if you're, second, third ADs, you can be responsible for the way that extras interact with each other. For example, usually with a shoot that's pretty big, like you'll have your second and third ADs that are working with extras and all that kind of stuff. Like, you can get kind of creative with that, but really there's like templates that you should follow so that they're not being distracting. A little different if you're doing a Zucker Brothers thing, a little different if you're doing the diner scene in Top Secret, which is one of my favorite scenes ever made. A little different there, but usually that's more of a creative choice by the director. But often, the kind of creative choices that you have as an AD are very, very limited. An AD, an assistant director, is not like really remotely close to the director. Like, the assistant director is like, I think of them as two completely different kind of things. You have your creative director, and then you have your management person. Like, that's how I see it. And your assistant director is there. Your job is to make sure that everybody on the creative side has the time they need to get stuff done, and to make it where all they're worried about, like all you want your director or the actors worried about, like the people who are making that product, and your cinematographer, all those people, you want to make sure that they are focused 100% of the time on creative stuff. You do not want any of them asking, when are we going to eat? You don't want any of them saying like, oh, I need to go get a Coke or whatever it is. You need to make sure that they are 100% invested in the creative production. If they are having to worry about the time, if they're having to worry about not getting done on time and those things, you're failing a bit. As the AD. That's my opinion. And that's what I did when I was ADing. So, for my opinion is that a director is best when they are focused on working with the creative team on that, on making the product. Re not wanting to direct. I have a similar problem. I call it a refusal to compete. If I'm worried about not being good enough, I won't do it. Mostly has to do with creative stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think that might have been it too. I think back when I was considering more of it, I just didn't have the courage, to be honest. I just didn't have it. So, I think today I would, but I just don't do a lot of that stuff anymore. So, yeah, and I think I had it more when I was producing a couple shorts that we made a while ago. I wanted to write and produce it, and I wanted other people to get involved in it. So I was like, if you get people who have names, they can do the directing. Like we got a VFX, a makeup effects guy who's really, really good. Vince Niebla to do the directing on one, and he did the makeup effects on both the movies. So we go, hey, you get the director position for this, and then we gave another guy who was known the other director position. That one didn't work out so well, but the first movie we did was great. Spam. Yeah, and for those projects, I produced and AD'd, so did the things that I'm used to. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about here is, and this is because the A7S III is being released, and I know it's kind of weird, like whenever there's a new product that's like a camera, there's this weird thing that happens where if you're like a huge fan of brands, I'm not sure why people would be huge fans of brands like this, but it's like you have these little camps and they take pot shots at each other about the product that came out. I don't really get that. Okay. But I was looking in some forums to see what people's reactions were to the A7S III, because I was just curious to see, what other people were saying. And I saw like some things that just reminded me how we still like, it doesn't matter what is produced by any of these companies, are just not going to make certain people happy. And I keep seeing this thing where like someone says, oh, the images out of this camera, they just, skin tones look so plasticky. I don't even know what that means. Because I haven't seen someone who can show me what that means without it being actually the way it was graded or the color profile used. That was the problem. Like skin tones looking waxy or plasticky or whatever. And I also like things like the motion cadence of, and I'm like, okay, so you realize that a camera like the A7S III is not really like, it's not the same as like getting a cinema camera, right? Like it's not the same thing. But the thing is that a camera like the A7S III, similar to like the GH5, was that with any of these cameras, what it comes down to is that there's the technology has caught up to here. Here's the level of our technology with cameras right now, and here's the general skill level. Okay, the general skill level for people that are using cameras that are here are like, they're lower. Okay, and this isn't to be mean. Okay, I'm not trying to say any of this to be mean to anybody. Okay, but like, with like an APS-C camera like this one, the XH1, I know that in photography, my skill is not good enough with this camera to warrant me buying like a large format or a medium format camera or whatever. Like, I know that my skill level would, like, regardless of how good the image quality might be as far as what it could do, I know I can't maximize that. Because with this camera, I do okay with photos. But it's, when I shoot photos, it's not like I'm going, man, like I wish my camera could do this, or if only I could get more dynamic range out of my photos. Honestly, like the dynamic range out of most stills cameras is awesome. And there are things you can do. Like, remember I said, here's our technology level. Okay. Here's our skill level. So even if you're having trouble with dynamic range for your photos, often those are situations where you can't control the lighting, and you're having a situation where you have like, it's like a landscape. That's often where the dynamic range is a lot more important. You're outside, it's uncontrolled lighting. You have sometimes there's like a bald sun, or there's clouds that are reflecting, a lot of light, and you have that issue. Well, if you know how to take multiple exposures and blend the images together, you can make up for that lack of dynamic range. Okay. So, if you keep thinking that you need to have a better camera, like I was just talking to one of my friends this past week about this. I was like, 5D, was it 5D Mark III, Nikon D810, like, these newer Fujis that are coming out. Man, if you can't get a good image with those in stills, dude, there's something wrong with you. Like, it's not the camera. It can't be at this point. It just can't be. I mean, if you're doing sports photography, that's like requires the higher end autofocus. I get that. But in general, like as far as image quality, if you're complaining about plasticky skin tones, if you're complaining about the lack of dynamic range, you're never going to have it. Like, you're just never going to have those things. I would, if I were you and I was still saying that, I would just resign to the fate that I was never going to have it. I was never going to have the camera that was going to be perfect. It just wasn't going to happen. And that's a very bleak outlook, in my opinion, as an artist. It's a very bleak outlook to go, man, like the gear is always holding me back. Like, I'll just never have it. It's always holding me back. So if you kind of change, because I actually think that in real life, it's probably a situation where you wish that your skills were a bit better. Okay. So if you think of it the other way, where you go, okay, I've got this piece of gear that is at this level. Okay. I'm probably here. What is it that I need to do to maximize the use of this camera? So in the case of the A7S III, and people complaining about how it looks in the footage that they're seeing online. First of all, the footage that you see online is mostly distributed via YouTube. YouTube is pretty much like the biggest bottleneck when it comes to distribution of video right now, because the codec, the way that it decodes the codec, it kind of like, it takes what you send it re-encodes it, and then it decodes it, and it distributes it in a way that makes it where people can, watch it without a bunch of buffering. Okay. So these are limitations that we have on distribution. Even if you have a camera that's capable of doing like, let's say it's like 20-bit color and has like 1 million stops of dynamic range. Once you start pushing that down into an 8-bit 420 HD codec, what are you going to end up with? Okay. So, and then you have to distribute that via the web. Okay. So when people are complaining about like artifacting that they're seeing, or they're complaining about like certain things with color, it's like, well, the distribution has something to do with that. Okay. And I know, because this has been something that I have to do, is look at how images appear, especially if you have like text. Okay. If you're dealing with text and you have to put it against like different colored backgrounds for education, you have to really understand how different monitors are going to show that information, even if they're like wrong, if it's a non-calibrated monitor or whatever. Okay. So a lot of what I see is complaints about the distribution. Okay. There's only so much that YouTube's going to send you. Okay. And it's the most popular way of sending videos. Maybe TikTok and all those other things are going to, change it. Or, I know Facebook in other countries is pretty big for distributing video, but generally, at least in the States, YouTube is like the king. So, that's going to be a limitation that you have to work around. And the reality is that most cameras that are available that are shooting these like 10-bit all intra codecs are giving you all the information that you need to make a proper, good looking video. And in most cases, in the vast majority of cases, the complaints that people have about the video that they're seeing has more to do with the skills or the creative decisions of the filmmaker than it does the camera itself. Okay. If you take like, when people are talking about like Soderbergh's movie where he shot it with like a cell phone, the thing is like, if you have a masterful director and you have people who know how to use equipment within the boundaries of its use, it's going to look good because they know how to tell a story and they know how to use those limitations to their advantage. If you don't know how to do that, and you're shooting like you go and you say, well, I'm going to shoot outside with a bald sun with a camera that only has 10 stops of dynamic range, and I'm not going to bring any lighting gear with me. Yeah, dude, yeah, you're going to have trouble. Like, you're going to have trouble because you're putting it in a situation that is not going to work. I was talking about last week about the A7S III. Wait, no. Yeah, I think it was last week, about how I was seeing complaints about the stills photo capability of the A7S III. And they were saying like, oh, but if you shoot birds, if I was to shoot birds with a 12 megapixel camera, like, that's not going to work because I have to crop in. It's like, then don't shoot birds with it. Like, it doesn't mean that the camera is bad. It doesn't mean that you can't use it and you can't get professional results with it. It means that, if you need a screwdriver, don't get a hammer. That's all that means. And I wanted to point this out too. Moonlight, if I remember correctly, is shot in ProRes. Okay, so the thing is that you can make a really good looking piece of video, whatever you want to call it, a film, a travel film, whatever the hell you want to call it, with like the GH5, assuming that you have lights, because the low light sucks. And if you know that, then your videos are going to look fine. And I've seen a lot of really good stuff with the GH5 and the GH5S. Okay. A7S III, same thing. Okay. If you shoot that camera within the limitations that it has, you make sure you white balance properly. You make sure that your sets are designed, like whatever it is. It doesn't matter if it's an interview, if it's whatever. If you make sure that the image itself looks good before you even hit that, record button, you're going to have, dude, the footage is going to look good. And let me just take a drink. The nuances that, high-end cinematographers and that are going to see, or if you have that ability to really see like the difference between two images that look almost exactly the same, but you're complaining about the motion cadence, or you're complaining about, this one has slightly more clipped highlights than this one, or whatever, the chances are that no person digesting your content is going to know any of that. They're not going to care. The thing that will matter the most is the content, and if it looks good enough. And that to me is that's the bar. It's the good enough bar. Okay. If you're able to produce content that has a good ROI, okay, that's a return on investment. Okay. You have content that has a good ROI. It looks good. It's going to be passable and actually look really good to consumers. Those small things that people are going to see are probably not going to be in their brains. Okay. And I think I've used it before, but there's like, there's some documentaries that you can watch that are not shot that great on Netflix, but man, did they have a lot of people watch them. Making a Murderer, for example, whatever you shoot with an A7S III is going to look better than season 1 of that, for sure. The oh shoot, I forget the name of it. There's a running back for the Saints. I can't remember the name of it right now. There's I can't remember the name right now. But there's another show documentary that was shot. I forget. It was an NFL player. I can't remember his name right now. It's gonna kill me. But I mentioned it before, where it's just not shot well. When I saw it, I was like, man, this does not look like really a professional crew is really shooting this. And that's because of the nature of how the documentary was made. But more people have seen that than most of the people complaining about an A7S III. Okay. So all I'm saying is that, keep more of an open mind on like this new gear that comes out, because if you don't think like something like an A7S III is going to be useful for a lot of people, you're out of your mind. And if you don't think that's going to be enough for people to make like really good looking video, dude, you're out of your mind. I keep seeing stuff like from the X-T3 and the X-T4 that I was hearing was horrible. I was hearing that like both those cameras had this horrible color science, and there wasn't enough dynamic range and all these complaints. And then I look at this really great footage that people are shooting with it, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It looks perfectly fine. So I don't get that stuff. So, I think we're at the point where if you get, gear that has that 10-bit all intra, it has, especially if it's like an A7S III where you need a lot of features, assuming that it doesn't overheat or whatever. If you need raw, even like the BMPCC 4K and 6K, especially the 6K, dude, like the Pocket 6K is a hell of a deal. You've got all you need as far as image quality. The rest of it is up to you. Like the rest of it is your ability to work with the limitations of the gear that you do have, and your ability to shoot good content and to have like a proper way of shooting it where it works for the content that you are trying to provide. And I think it's really healthy to have a mentality of, if your project didn't come out right, have a mentality of it's probably your fault and not the camera's fault. Okay. That is a very freeing thing. It means that you have room to grow, you have room to learn, and you don't have to just spend money on it. Yeah, again, this is not like, me trying to accuse anybody of anything or make anybody feel bad. That's not what it's about. It's, to me, again, it's very freeing to know that if something came out the way I didn't want, I could just, the next time I do it, I could pay more attention and make sure that I use my tools correctly to get it to come out right. Obviously if your camera is broken, if like, the autofocus is definitely not working, and it's not tracking the eye, or it's not tracking a thing that you need, obviously it's probably the camera's fault in that situation. But often the things that I see people complain about, like the look of the footage, is usually the fault of the person making it, not the camera. Yeah. I mean, that's what I have to say about it. It's just like, this past week, I've just been kind of like annoyed at seeing how like this bicker back and forth between, these camps, and complaining, oh, but the Canon color science is way better. Look at the skin tones. And then Sony going like, what are you talking about? This one looks great. No, it doesn't. It looks like plastic, dude. Like, no, they're both fine. It's usually the people who made the content. That's, the thing. Yeah. So let's go into the chat. I'm going to look up the name of this football player real quick because it's really bugging me. See here. No, not him. Ricky Williams. That's the one. So the documentary was about Ricky Williams. If you're not an American, and you weren't around at the time, like, and paying attention to football, you probably don't know who I'm talking about. But Ricky Williams was one of the biggest disappointments, especially if you're a New Orleans Saints fan. So yeah, that's the football player I was thinking of. Yeah, the Ricky Williams documentary does not look great, but it's still a good documentary. That's the thing. It's like I said before, content is king. Like if they can, if someone can make that Ricky Williams documentary, it can be engrossing. It can be, it can captivate you. Then, you don't have any excuses if you have, especially the modern conveniences of like an A7S III, or, the Canon Cine cameras that have like all the autofocus and the great image quality. You can shoot in the dead of night without noise. I mean, these are all things that most people didn't have, 10 years ago. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think it might be an iPhone problem with YouTube. I think I mentioned before that I was trying to watch some content that I was doing like a quality, what do you call it? Benchmark setting or whatever for quality. And I was uploading multiple codecs to YouTube because I wanted to see if I was to distribute something that I wanted to look higher quality. But I wanted it to be in like, say QHD or regular HD. What difference it would make if I upload it in QHD, if I upload it in 4K, if I upload it to H.265, if I upload H.264, if I upload ProRes. So when I did this test on my laptop and on my desktop, there was no issues really with the quality. Okay, they were pretty consistent, and they're both Windows machines because I don't buy Apple products. On my phone, which is an Android phone, also no issues with quality. When I use the iPad, which is not mine, it's my wife's. When I use the iPad, there every time it had a cut, it would lose quality, and then if the cut was long enough, it would like the detail would snap in. So I don't know what the hell is going on with Apple, but if it's iPhones that are having trouble with streams now, and then they were already having this issue, like I don't know if the iPads and the phones are the same thing, but if it's the same problem, dude, like I don't know what the hell they're doing at Apple. But YouTube is one of the largest distributors of content in the world, and if they can't get that right, like I don't know what they're doing that's different, but they should really fix it. Photographic Element says, I like split director productions, one director for actors, one director for shot list, overall look of the film. I would not want to do that. No way. I unless I really trusted the other person. There's like, I can get that kind of, but really you need to have, a lot of times with that, like if you have an actor's director, they have to put a lot of trust into their cinematographer, because that's going to be, I remember talking with one of the ADs for Scorsese, and he said when Scorsese would say like to the guy like, hey, this is what I want it to look like, he would just reference a movie. He'd be like, yeah, remember that movie, the scene in the dinner scene where this happened? Yeah, I want it to look like that. And that would be like basically the direction. So I guess if you're a director and that's how you kind of do things, like I would say just make sure you're in tune with your DP, cinematographer, whatever you want to call them. Hey, look at that, Long Rider. Thank you so much, man. I didn't even know you were in here. You're lurking. Thanks, man. That's very generous of you. Thank you so much. And because the thing is, like the actors and the look of the film and everything, like all of that has to play in. Like if you're doing a drama and you're not on the same page as far as the look and the feel you're going in for the shots and the way that the actors are playing, like that can really be an issue. So I don't know, maybe that works like for some, but I don't know. Photographic Element says C200B is $4,000 and A7S3 is $3,500. Yeah, but the C200B is a lot larger. The thing with the A7S3 that makes it, like, to me, those are two different things. Like I understand the comparison. I totally understand the comparison. If I had to pick based on the things that I do, I would probably pick the C200B, because I already have the Pocket 4K for like a smaller kind of thing. But the A7S3, for these people that like to go out and shoot just like camera and lens and have it where like you can really just put it in a tiny bag and take it out, dude, that's like a dream come true, because it has like it has what should be a decent codec in there. And you can shoot it internal. Okay. You shoot the larger format that people are interested in now. You get the autofocus features, all of those things, and it's good quality. That's the thing. Like, and the image quality of both of those can be sufficient for whatever project. It depends on the project, obviously, but usually either of those, if you shoot it right, can be sufficient. But C200B has things that the A7S3 doesn't have. So it's really kind of, it depends on the job, really. Photographic Element says, I said the same thing this week. Skills versus tools. One will be replaced in a few years. One will last a lifetime. Yeah, you can always build your skills. You'll never have like 100% of all the things you could possibly learn. You're just never going to learn everything. There are scientists that work their entire life in just one tiny field of study and they only know like a little tiny bit about it. There's only that much that they know for certain, and then there's all this stuff that they don't know. And that's the thing, is like you really need to focus on developing your skill. The tool, usually the tool is going to be fine for the job. whatever it is you're doing. Some are going to be better than others, but in most cases, if you're talking about using like a low end camera, as far as like what you would expect out of cinema or whatever, like a A7S III, and you're using it for like the kind of productions you expect to use that on, it will be enough. Okay. It just will be. Chris says, "Hey Tony, so many raw footage graded out like so hazy. Is that technical or skill level?" I'm not sure what you mean. So many raw footage graded out. Maybe you mean looks hazy? Is that a technical or skill level? If it looks hazy, there's a number of things. If you're talking about the image looking hazy, I would guess that it's because they're using vintage lenses, and vintage lenses often look hazy. They'll usually have like a lower contrast kind of look to it, because usually the blacks are getting lifted. And this is at the lens level, not at the level of the texture. So you're not actually going to see any more out of there. It's just going to lift. It's the way that the reflections work. It just kind of lifts the blacks up, and it looks weird. So, at least to me. So if that's what you're talking about, that might be a lens issue. It might also be a grading issue. If the footage looks gray, it's probably because they didn't add contrast properly for the delivery. So like if it's Rec 709, there's a certain amount of contrast that you expect to see out of that footage. If it doesn't look correct, it will either look like it's like way too much contrast, or it'll look like there's way too little contrast. So that's probably the problem. And usually if you're shooting with like a 10-bit codec, if you're shooting like with a 10-bit, 422 codec that has decent bit rate, it's probably your fault. It's probably your fault. It's either the lens you used to shoot it with, because especially if it's like a light source that's going to be going into the lens, you can't really see things and it looks hazy and you didn't intend for it to look that way, then that would be your choice on lenses, and not, making sure that you're getting rid of stray light problems. If it's in the grade, it's just that you graded it either as a creative choice that may or may not have worked. It depends on if that's what you meant to do. And then, you can always change that. Like usually that's just a grading problem. To me, footage that looks like that doesn't look good. Photographic Element says, "Is that H.265 compression? YouTube will accept 8K footage for 208-bit. My understanding is that it only, I think it might be doing like HDR stuff, but I don't know, because I mean, I've seen stuff that's presented in HDR, but I don't have any HDR monitors, so I can't speak on that. But yeah, it's 4208-bit is what you're seeing. So, unless it's like HDR stuff, I think if it's HDR, it's different. But 4208-bit, like H.264 or H.265, which is still an 8-bit 420, usually. Sometimes people are doing 10-bit, but I don't think it's displaying in 10-bit. Like YouTube basically takes whatever you upload and it like re-encodes it, and then the way that it spits it out is dependent on how it re-encoded it and how it's going to broadcast it. So like one of the complaints that people have had about YouTube is that if you add film grain, it might look weird depending on how, like what resolution you uploaded it to and how it compresses it. So Zack Snyder's iPhone short on Vero was pretty cool. I haven't seen it. Zack Snyder, I feel bad about Zack Snyder, because I feel like he kind of started doing the wrong stuff. Like, I actually like the look of some of his things. I remember some of the stuff in Man of Steel. I remember looking at the when we were getting the shots from the studio and just going, man, this movie looks awesome. Like, I really liked it. I liked the look. And then I watched the movie and I was just not a fan of the story and how it was told. I feel like the same thing for me was with 300. I did not like 300. I thought it looked really cool. It looked awesome, but I didn't like the movie. So maybe you better like a visual guy. Emotion VFX, no issues shooting birds with 12 megapixels. If someone can't get closer, needs to lure the bird closer. Yeah, I think Emotion VFX, what they were saying was that you know, a lot of bird photographers will shoot like, you know, even with like a 400 millimeter lens or something, like it'll be kind of far, and then they want to crop in, and that's what their complaint was. And I don't know. American Vandal. American Vandal, I think, was shot on Reds. I think some of it might have been on Sony's because I remember looking it up. But I think they shot at least the interviews on Red camera. Emotion VFX, even a 135 is often enough. Sometimes I use 300. Dude, like I have a 100 to 400, and I often can't get close enough on wild birds. But I think you're better than me. So, yeah, I think I mentioned the running back that I couldn't remember was Ricky Williams. That was a documentary about Ricky Williams that, if you watch it, doesn't look great, but it is a good documentary still, at least in my opinion. Just as you mentioned, iPhone problem, the feed cut out on my computer. Man, I don't know what the heck. I got my phone here and I'm not seeing any issues. So if it's not an iPhone problem, then yeah, out of sync TV, not streaming, not tested PC. Dude, I don't know what the heck's going on. Like, that is really disappointing. That was really disappointing. Maybe that's why my numbers keep dropping. I thought it was just because of me. People didn't like me. Maybe it's technical issues. I don't know what it would be. Like, honestly, I'm testing it all out and I'm not seeing any issues. Yeah, Chris, you're talking about the look. The hazy look is usually a creative choice. That if you don't like it, for you, it would have been like a failure. Yeah, Scott Hartman, thanks. Like, I thought it was an iPhone thing then. So it's not. I don't know what the problem is, you guys. Like, I really don't. I wish I did. Like, you know, let me see. I'll open it up on my computer. I've got it on my phone. That's so annoying. I'll have to look up some stuff on it then, because I really don't like it that you guys can't really watch this. That's really frustrating. I make sure to put time aside to do these, and if you guys can't watch them, that really frustrates me. Yeah, I've got it up. I don't see any issues. It's really frustrating. I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is. Well, I'll do some tests probably this coming week and try to figure out what the problem is with the feed. I don't know if I can fix it. I just don't know if I can fix it. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, Chris, yeah, the look, if you're seeing hazy looking stuff on people's footage and you don't like it, it's usually a creative choice. The hazy look it can be a number of things. It could be a technical issue, which means that they didn't clean something. Like if you don't make sure that your lenses are clean from any hazing or from excessive dust. I mean, like a lot of dust, especially on the back elements where you're going to see it. The front elements usually not so much, but the back element, sometimes there'll be like fingerprints. It could be dust on the sensor. If you don't store your cameras properly and there's like a lot of dust that gets stuck on the sensor, especially with mirrorless cameras, you can get like a bunch of dust that gets on there. You got to make sure that you always leave either a lens or a lens cap, or not a lens cap, a cap on the hole that's in front of the sensor. Always cover that so that dust or dirt can't get in there. But usually what I see as far as the haziness is when people use vintage glass, and it's just the way that the older anti-reflective coating, when they were putting on anti-reflective coating for older lenses that were designed for film, they would have it on the front element, but it would not be on the back element. Okay, because film does not, put the image back up. Like if film, it's chemical, right? and then on a sensor there's glass and other things. So when the light hits the sensor, it bounces back up into the lens. So the anti-reflective coating on the back elements of newer lenses is there to help deal with that kind of problem. Older lenses, not only do they have not as good anti-reflective coating technology, but it also is put in different places. So, like if you look at the difference between, shooting with one of Canon's newer lenses with that brand new AirSphere coating, like that AirSphere coating is something else. Like it's incredible, like what they did with the anti-reflective coating. I remember people going like, "Oh, these new Canon lenses, they're not that great." And I was like, dude, did you see how the AirSphere like coating works? It's incredible. Like if you had any problems with reflections, like they really done a job to make sure that looks better. If you don't care, then it won't matter. But older lenses usually have like a flaring issues, and it's called veiling glare. So when you have like a veiling glare, it usually creates that wash over the image. And even if you go into post and try to add contrast, it can not be great. Hey, Emotion VFX, thanks, man, for the euro. That really helps out. Thank you so much. So that's probably what you're seeing. And considering how many people are deciding to use vintage glass nowadays, I would imagine that that's the reason you're seeing it. Cthulhu says, have you seen Canon's latest camera patent? It looks like a boxy red, said to be priced around $4,500. I haven't. I don't usually keep my ear to the ground on stuff like that. It's just like, and especially now I'm not really in the market for it, and I don't kind of like keep my eyes glued to products that are coming out. But that is interesting. If they can get more inexpensive video cameras out, especially ones, actually, Blackmagic Design has really kicked butt recently with their cameras, because they got that ATEM Atom or whatever, that switcher set. They got that out and made their pocket cameras usable for doing like these switching, like live switching and stuff. Man, like they were thinking, like with the COVID situation, they were really thinking about that. So anyway, no, I haven't seen the patent, and the kinds of stuff that I'm more interested in are like a lot of the things that BMD's doing is like the right thing for the most part. And then the Sony, the newest camera, is doing the right thing too. For video. Motion VFX for concert filming and tour documentation, A7S III actually is a great tool. Yeah, P4K rigged with cables everywhere is kind of dangerous with stage diving, pogo, and mosh pits, but bra is worth the risk. Yeah, that's the only real kick in the butt for me with those, like these kinds of cameras. It's like you've got this really great convenient form factor and all that with the Sony, and then Blackmagic Design made this awesome codec that hasn't been adopted as like the standard yet. I think it should be. I would love it if like every camera could have either something like bra or bra. Like if they could just have that, I'd be happy. But you have to weigh your options. With the Pocket 4K, I'll bet, especially for the concert stuff, when the lighting changes significantly, if you want to have like matching stuff, it's probably way easier to do it with the Pocket Cam than it is with anything shooting 10-bit. So yeah. Photographic Element says the history of Thermopylae is much better than the movie. I'm pretty sure. I just didn't like a lot of the storytelling elements in it, like especially how the Queen reacts to things is really silly. It just seems like it's the writing is just not really great for me. It's kind of I felt it was like not a good use of her talents, because I think she's great. But I don't know. I just didn't like it that much. I thought it was like visually very engaging, but the story not too great. And yeah, if there's an issue with the streaming, I can't do anything about it. Like, unfortunately, again, I've got my phone set up. It doesn't look like there's no issues on my phone, so I don't, or on my computer. I don't know what the problems might be. But the reason why I was kind of talking about the Apple stuff is because I know that with some of the things I've watched through YouTube, Apple does struggle really, really bad on the iPad. And like even if you have it set at higher resolutions, it just doesn't look like it. Helios 55M, 55 millimeter f2 at f2 is really hazy. Would not recommend. Yeah, some people really like that, dude. That's the thing. Like some people, 44M. Yeah, I think that's what you meant. That I think you're talking about the 58 f2. That lens, like a lot of people really like it, and I don't like that lens. RF 85 1.2 DS lens. I'm talking about like with the Aerosphere, the ones that I saw was like this, I believe it was 7200 had the new coating, and like people were kind of poo-pooing it because the 70-200 2.8 that they had previously from Canon was like this great lens, and then they came out with this new one, and it was getting poo-pooed. But I was like, man, but that Aerosphere coating, it was awesome. Like it really does a good job of dealing with reflections. So, okay. So I've got a little over a half hour. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat and I will attempt to answer them. So I'll kind of riff on kind of what's been happening this past week with me because I work in educational content. And I basically produce educational videos for higher ed. And we have so much work right now that it's unbelievable. So what I recommend for all of you, doesn't matter like really what country you're in, because I know I get people from all over the country that watch this. I strongly recommend getting into talks with universities, with local schools, with anybody you can, if it involves education and learning, and seeing how you can fit in to not only help during the pandemic, but also this can help get you into a career that is not only for me very personally rewarding, but also financially very rewarding. So with universities, a lot of this stuff can be a lot easier than you might be thinking. And for some of you that are interested in doing like narrative storytelling and all that stuff, like I totally get that. The thing is that there's, in my experience, there's not a whole lot of money in it. There's a lot more money in as far as like being able to earn a living in areas that are underserved and not as competitive. And if you can find those niches and you can get a foothold early, the better it is for you in the long run. Because you can be more of an expert on it when more people kind of come in. So, you know, for me being at, you know, the kind of, it's a bit early as far as like education goes, the kind of adding video technology and being able to produce content like made by and for universities, it's still kind of in the baby era. And the level of quality that's expected is like, dude, the bar is like super low. So when I produce stuff, it's really high quality content because it's especially, and I do a lot of it, it's in comparison to everything else that's out there. And if you look at the competitors for what we do versus what, you know, what the competitors are doing, there's a pretty significant difference in what is being provided. And what you can do to get involved and understand how to get into this is to really start trying to help people understand how video can help them with their education, especially with distance learning. What it means is that teachers can help other students with assignments or with learning in ways that they probably never thought to do. So even for instance, if the teachers, let's say they had a weekly lecture that they had to do. Let's say if it was like, you know, a 90-minute lecture that they had to do, kind of boring to work on. But even if it's something like a 90-minute lecture, that kind of content can be very helpful for students to not only have it, recorded so that they can watch the lecture multiple times, but you can add in images to help stimulate the learning experience so that they're not just watching someone talk at you with a whiteboard. And this can be a really great way to help. And usually for like those long lectures, what we do is we break these up into multiple videos. Okay, so it makes it easier on you, makes it easier on them, and you really structure out how they can provide the information in a digestible way so it doesn't overload people. And it also can be very low budget, because in learning, especially in a lecture situation, you don't want to have a bunch of flashy stuff going on. It's actually in your benefit as the editor or the producer, and in the benefit of the educator, to do less flashy crap. Okay, like if you ever watch the news, all this stuff that flies around on the screen, it actually distracts people. Okay, it's made to more like you have things to kind of make you keep paying attention, but it's not really to the story. It's like to random crap that's going on. You have the little crawler, you'll have, an image here, you'll have a bunch of other information. Often you'll see like data that has no real context. It's just like data that shows up and they talk about it, and you can't really understand what the context fully is of that. Okay, so in education, focusing on things, taking out background music, for example, focusing on the learning objectives, and simple animations, like if you have text that needs to come in to reinforce topics or ideas, these are the things that you want to do. And it can be very easy work. And again, it can be really rewarding. And because there's not a whole lot of people that understand production, because there's not a whole lot of people who really understand production that are working with educational facilities in the way that you could, it's actually at the detriment to students, especially now during COVID. Like in the United States, local basically like schools have to figure out what they're going to do individually, and for universities, for colleges, doesn't matter if it's like a community college or a university, having people who are willing to help them. And even if you're like a gun for hire, or if, let's say, they bring you on part-time or full-time for, let's say, 6 months to a year while we work through, the pandemic situation, that gives you a foothold. And in education, they really, like, at least in the US, like compared to a lot of other jobs in education, they really take care of you. Like you usually get more time off. Like you get, especially if you work for like a college, you get all the major holidays and stuff off, and other holidays you wouldn't think you would get off. I remember when I worked the news, like I didn't get any holidays because the news never stops. And I was working on, the 4th of July and all that stuff. I would have to come in sometimes on Christmas. So, the time off is good, pay is usually pretty good. And, if you really work well for them, they will trust you, and you will have a lot of work. And it's, I'm not going to promise it's the most exciting thing in the world, but it will be work that will be, it's the kind of stuff that once you have done the freelance stuff for a while, you go, man, I would really like to have a consistent job. So it really helps in that. So that, I guess that's my major advice for this week, is because of the workload that I have. I mean, I have stuff that's going to last me with some of the news that we got this past week. Dude, I have work that's going to keep me going for like 2 years right now, from the kind of asks that are being made. So it's a way to kind of get lemonade, if that makes sense, with the situation. If you're struggling to find work, you're struggling to, find a foothold in an industry that's impacted with a ton of people and a lot of competition, education is the area that people aren't looking at. Because if you go to a film school or whatever, they usually teach you to do narrative. They don't really teach you how to do a lot of other things. I had a few video production classes, but it was more on the technical stuff. You didn't really learn how to really light for it. You didn't really learn how to, set a schedule. You didn't learn how to do a bunch of things, and especially with like editing, getting stuff done for time, like news editing versus editing for a narrative. They're just totally different processes. So that's another thing too. If you're going to get involved in, if you're going to get involved in this, what I strongly recommend, and these are things that you might not be really thinking about, that actually earns money. This is the stuff that earns me the most money, is organization and speed. It's a lot less to do with like the production value of stuff, even though we do make products that look really good. If you can't organize your files, for example, you're going to have a serious hard time with really most things in this kind of field. But if you work narrative, sometimes you can get away with that stuff if it's like your own stuff, and as long as the product looks good, at the end, usually it's not that big of a deal. But in stuff like this, you need to make sure that you're keeping a hold of all your assets, because you don't want to have to rebuy anything. You have to hold on to, if you have visual effects that you're creating for something. If you have like, say, a visual effect or a graphic, like you have animated text, you want to make templates of all that stuff. Like you create maybe 3 or 4 templates, and you can use that across multiple projects. So it's like super easy for you to produce the same level of quality and make the colors interchangeable, so that it can be for like, different universities or even different colleges or whatever it is. And to make sure you understand how to archive all your stuff. I don't have like a visual for you, but I'll just do a quick thing. Okay. If your desktop is like a bunch of shortcuts all the way down the screen, the first way to get better at archiving or, saving money and time is to make it where you only have the shortcuts that are absolutely necessary. And the easiest way to do that is to have one file, one folder on your work computer that's called work. And in that folder is all your projects. And you come up with a naming scheme so that everything is alphabetically aligned, and you don't have, a bunch of hanging stuff or like weird names. Okay. That includes going with all caps or all lowercase, up to you, using dashes and underscores instead of spaces. And once you get into your different, project folders, you have your folders set up in the same way for each one. You've got like, an assets folder, a raw video folder, a script folder, a storyboard folder. Like each of these major pieces that you need to be separated and organized. And then each of those files need to follow a naming structure. And I could give it to you if you want, but maybe I can make a whole video series on this, because to me, it's the most important thing. But the naming convention that you use needs to be the same across the board, so you don't lose anything. And if you like, one of the ways that I really impressed people where I work now was by basically revamping the way that they organize their files, so that whenever there was an update to a course and they, let's say, needed to change out just, a couple sentences, we didn't have to redo the video all over again. If you work with a vendor, you usually have to redo the whole thing over again, because all they send you is the baked render. They don't send you everything else. But when you are working closely with an institution, you save the stuff, you save the assets, you make it where you can have like a day turnaround. If you can make it where those kinds of quick fixes, where they might have maybe had to spend tons of money because someone was basically fleecing them, they will respect you and they will trust you. And then you can continue to get even more and more work with them. So, that's a major thing. Like for me, it's almost like it's almost like a PSA for all of you. Because like for me, education is really, really important. And especially out here in the US, like we're having a really hard time adapting with this COVID situation. And I can't imagine how much better things would be if the people who could help facilitate, producing the kinds of content that schools need to help their kids learn while we're in this situation, the more we can do that, the better we can serve our communities and, make money to live on at that. So I encourage you guys to ask questions about this. Like if you're interested, because I'll forget if you don't do it now. Cthulhu says maybe it's a good time to talk about the importance of data redundancy. Data redundancy is important. So when you are working on a project, you should download from wherever you get it. Make sure that a client or whoever does not delete their own stuff. Download it. You want to put, you should have like 2 drives in your computer. You should also have external drives or whatever you need. You should at least have 2 files that are redundant. Okay. So when you work on something, it should be on your local drive, which should be a solid state drive. And then your backup drives, you have there too. And you should have an archival if you're working with an institution. Okay. If you like work for or with, meaning if you're like an educational technologies vendor, if you're working with and on long-term, if you're working long-term with a university or an educational facility or whatever, you need to make sure you're helping them or facilitating, you make them pay for it, but you're facilitating archiving all of this stuff. Because if you don't do it, you don't help, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it in a stupid way that costs them more money, and it's going to cost you more money. And it's not that they're dumb or anything. It's just that they don't know how important archiving is, and to make it done in a really clear, obvious, understandable way. So, make sure you have a good, solid plan and get that going. So really, at any given time when you're working on a project, you should have, your archive. Once it's done, you have your work project folder, and you have your backup, which you should back up your that folder like I'd say if you're doing like a whole lot of work on stuff, it's every day. Like at the end of the day, you just re-upload to your extra drive. But if you're working VFX especially, it's every time you do an iteration, you want to save a new version. And last thing on that, as far as redundancy, when you save projects, even if it's using Resolve, which uses like a weird way of doing it, like if you have Premiere, it's a lot easier because you can see the project file like right there. Save a new version. Okay, so I'm going to just put right here. Here's how I do it. So it'll be like the name and then okay. So if you look in the chat, okay, see that naming convention? ABC123 would be like the course code, week 1 of the course, and LEC meaning lecture, and V001. I would use that on the project file, okay? And every time you do a major change, when you do like a major update, or at the end of the day, you save a new version, okay? You can either do it that way, or every time you open up a project file, every time, okay? When you close down, like say you close your computer, you go home for the day, or like say you're working from home, you come in, you open up that project file, you can either copy paste a new project file and call it V2, or when you open it, you immediately save a new version as a version 2. If you don't do that, I can almost guarantee you're going to screw up. Okay, I can almost guarantee you that at some point you're going to get a corrupt file that's only a version 1, or you'll never even know what version's what. You'll call it final. Just update that number. Okay, that's your redundancy with your project files. So Yeah, so great advice. Thanks, Photographic Elements. Emotion VFX, how do you get a recurring income from that EDU content after it's done? Selling courses yourself on top? I don't like the guru schools. So Emotion VFX, the way that you do it is that you get employed with a company that does those things, or you know, if you want to create a company, you can do that too. But you can either work at the university, okay, like my opinion, if you don't know how to run a business, which most people who know how to do content don't really know how to run a business, and it's not your fault, you just don't know how to do it, okay? And it's really hard. It's really hard to do that, and you can't focus on doing the thing that you probably would rather do, okay? For me, I like doing content. I don't really like the whole thing of trying to figure out taxes and, you know, trying to figure out how to maximize my profit as far as making sales and all that stuff. I like other people to do that stuff, honestly, okay? I'm mulling over doing, you know, some of my own stuff, like, you know, smaller projects or whatever. But for learning institutions, okay. For learning institutions, the way to do it is to get them to employ you. Okay. Like there's some people that, especially on YouTube, that seem to think that if you work at a place or if you work for a place, that's kind of like a bad thing when you're a video producer or whatever. It's not. It's really not. It's steady, good work that has, you know, all the benefits that go along with it, and you get to focus on the thing that you're good at. And a lot of times with an educational facility, they will help you with your education. They might help to pay a little bit for, you know, college degree that's in, you know, in one area or the other. If you have a bachelor's degree, you could work at getting a master's degree or eventually a doctorate. A lot of people that I work with are all trying to get like master's or doctorates in something, and they can get help that way. But that's the way you do it. If you try to do things as a freelancer, it's different, because when you're a freelancer, you have to develop like that level of trust, but you're always kind of like isolated, right? When you're working together at the university, you will work together to find things to make the university better. And that's where I think a lot more of the value of what we do comes into play. So I'm not sure what you mean by guru schools. And I don't sell courses myself. Like there's a difference between creating media content in the way that I do things and being a designer. Like if you design courses, it doesn't necessarily mean that you create the media for it. And like an instructional designer will help a faculty subject matter expert develop a course around core topics. Okay. And they will make it where they can teach this information to people in a way that makes sense and maximizes learning. That's the point of it. And then someone like you or me will develop the media. So if it's like a video that they need, if it's a lecture that they need edited, or if it's like, you know, talking about what the course learning objectives are going to be for a course, sometimes it's just getting people interested in courses, almost like an advertisement, then you would help them to create those things. For the labs at the local university, the recruitment video that we made, like we got like 8 times the responses that other people got. Some people got no responses. We got more people responding to our video than every other laboratory runner. So, you know, there's a lot to be said about how effective media can be if you do it right. So, I mean, that's the way to do it. And you have to show that you have value to them. And I think a lot of it is like you say, hey, look, you know, let's work together on a project or two. And then you try to get in that employment talk. You know, it's like, hey, you know, if I was part of your university, even if I started out working part-time, we could produce X amount of videos per quarter or per semester for students, you know, and the more they work with you, the more they would understand how important this media content is. The thing is, not everybody learns the same way. There's a lot of people who respond much better to video content and having visuals and being able to watch it a few times, or just listen to it while they're jogging or while they're at the gym or whatever they're doing, like while they're cooking. And if they don't have that and they just have to try to retain everything at the lecture, they might have been tired that day. They might not have eaten. when they needed to. Like, there's a number of reasons why education or learning doesn't take place. And by creating the media, you do a better job of removing those barriers from people. The more the educators understand that, and the more that they, if your goals are in line where you're both trying to not just make money, okay, it's not just about making money, it's about making sure people are educated. If you're on that same goal, they will come to the conclusion, like we already do, that media is very, very important and helps with the educational process. So yeah, that's the way to do it, in my opinion. So yeah, 5750 Mike says, hey, Tony, that's a lot of truth and value in what you're saying here with the education stuff. I'm in the UK, and one of my clients is a private college in the biology field. They've been doing many of their lectures via Zoom. I've been in talks with them to offer professional live streaming services. That is exactly what you need to be doing. That is exactly what you need to be doing. We're working with a college right now on getting a summit that's supposed to be like done through live stream, because they usually do it like in person, and we've got to help them figure out how to do it. The videos that we normally would do, we'd have like people shoot in a studio. Well, now we can't do that. So what they're doing is they're recording via Zoom, and then they'll send that recording to us, and we will do like edits and stuff on it. And this is stuff that you guys could do. Like, if you understand how to edit, and you know how to, the big thing is being able to talk to people. Like, I'm pretty sure, Mike, that when you're working with these people, you're able to connect with them personally. Like, when you speak to them, if they got to understand like that, you know what you're doing, and that you can always, when they send you their lectures or they send you whatever it is for their videos, that you will do right by them. You'll edit out all the stuff that might make them look bad. You'll add images that are relevant. You want to make their life as easy as possible, and you want to use your expertise as a visual storyteller to help them to educate. And that can be a hard thing to learn. Like, the more you do it, the more you kind of understand how to talk to people, and the more you can kind of get them to trust you. But that's like the big thing. I think there's a lot of distrust sometimes between faculty and media, because they're just not used to it. They don't want to be told what to do. I think that's a big thing with faculty. But if you make it clear to them that it's like, no, I'm going to use my expertise to help you to create what you want. Like, if you don't know how to tell your story or explain the content visually, I want to take that burden off your shoulders, because that's where I'm an expert. You do whatever you want with the content. That's your world. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will use my expertise to make it look as good as possible for you with what resources that we have. And, also make sure that they know that they will have the final sign off. They will have the right to, have you do multiple iterations to where they're happy with it. And what I recommend, if you're doing this, is to be sure that you storyboard out what images you're going to use and how you're going to cut it. Because if you don't do that, they'll be surprised at the end, and you're going to redo a bunch of work. Like, what you want to do is make sure that you're not redoing anything. You want to make sure it's like one cut, one version, and passed. If you can do that, you save yourself a ton of time. You save everybody a ton of money. So that's what you want to do. Yeah, man, like, the Zoom thing is really something. The amount of educational content being done now is, and they need us. Like, they really do. Even this past week, I regraded footage that was sent to us because it looked really, really bad. Like, this one guy, he, shot in a mixed lighting situation, and like, there was like a yellow light that was hitting his head and made him look really, really bad. So I regraded all of it using ACES. Weird, right? Like, I actually used ACES with Zoom footage to get it to look better. So, highly recommend, in wherever you are, if you're watching this, and you really want to get into this field doing educational content and making some decent money, like start contacting universities. Like, even if you have to pull the, charity card and be like, hey, send me a lecture or something, and I can show you how I can cut it up to where and we can cut out space, put a watermark in there so that they don't use it, but, show them how you can do it, and you might get more work out of that. So anyway, if you have any more questions, please let me know in the chat. I've got a few minutes left. So that's all I had for this evening. I apologize if you guys were having trouble with the stream. There's really nothing I can do about it. If it's like closing on people's phones or whatever, like, I don't know why that would be happening. So I do apologize, but there's nothing I can really do about it. So appreciate it, Emotion VFX. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for all your donations. It really helps me out. I'm going to see about how to use some of this in the future here when I finally get an actual check from YouTube, because even with ads and thousands of views on stuff, you don't get paid very much from YouTube. So thank you so much for your donations. It really helps out. It does a lot. And let me know if you have any more stuff. I know that we're in contact. So let me know if you need any help with anything. Just email me or contact me. I think you're with me on Facebook. So alrighty. I'll stay on for like a minute or two longer. I am extremely hungry, and we are having fried chicken tonight. So I am excited. Let's see here. I think that was it. I don't think I have anything else. Yeah, that's it. So wait a minute or two. Oh, you know what? Somebody had asked, this is funny, but somebody had asked if I was grading the footage any different. I'm not grading anything. This is the Eterna, what? Oh, geez. This is just the Eterna color profile. And then I think I just turned that light on behind me. And because if you don't understand like how colored lights affect the shot, because that's a tungsten bulb, and this light is it's using daylight balance, but it also has some tungsten added in because it has like the blue and the orange knobs, so I can turn it up and down. So I try to get this a little bit warmer, but that probably made it look the way that people said looked better. So it's probably just turning on that light in the background, and that, with the way that the light goes, probably spills up over and helps to color it, and it looks different. So that's probably what happened. I didn't grade anything. In fact, I haven't graded anything. This is all just Eterna through the XH1 and the Sigma 18 to 35 1.8 at 1.8. So if you were curious, that's why it looks like this. And the lighting I have set up is actually for, the computer that I have over here, because this is the same setup that I use to communicate with people. Oh yeah, that's the other thing real quick. When you contact educators, right? When you contact educators or deans or whoever it is that you're going to talk to try to get work, like if you talk to them and it looks like trash, like if your footage that you're sending through Zoom or WebEx or whatever it is you're using to talk to them, if it looks like trash, they're probably not going to trust you. So if you're meeting them and they don't really know you and you're meeting for the first time or whatever, make sure you have a decent camera with a decent lens that you're using, because if you don't do that and your lighting looks bad, like this is not the greatest studio or whatever. But when you compare this to what most people have, this looks way better, and they will trust you more. I've had it where I've gone into meetings since kind of upgrading my setup because of COVID. I've had it where faculty have complimented the way that this looks. Even if you don't like this, this looks better than whatever they're doing. So they will say, hey, this person might know what they're talking about. So, and also what you can offer, last thing, what you can offer as a service is consultation, even remote consultation for gear that they can get that will help them have better looking live streams or better looking conferences or whatever it is, better looking lecture videos if they're using Zoom or whatever, like they're doing an actual recording, especially help them with audio, okay? Because most of them have no idea how bad those integrated laptop microphones sound. This is a Sennheiser shotgun mic. They won't need this, but there are some pretty cheap, like, $100 or less lapel mics that they can use, help them figure out how to get it working. And then, and there's also some cheaper like desktop USB mics and stuff like that. If you can help them to especially help with their audio quality for lectures, that will not only help them to be more professional and make them feel better about themselves for doing that, you'll make their faces look better because usually a better lens will make their face look better. Make sure that they use lower resolution when they send it, not full HD. Like 720p is good, so that if they have any things like they don't wear makeup, then it's not so bad. But help them with their lighting. Usually it's just like they need to pick up their laptop, walk around and find a window and have that window hitting them and make sure that behind them is darker. Okay, that's the way to do it. And if you show them that, you show that you can consult with multiple people to help them make their stuff look better, and you can edit their footage and you can make their educational content that much better, dude. That's money, that's a job, that's help for you during this pandemic, and it also is help for them. So it's a mutual thing. Okay, so that's all I have this week. I hope that this was helpful to all of you. And I'll see you next week. So be safe, and I will talk to you later.